we go big shoulders? Do we go small? Are we fitted? Is it straight? There's all of those elements with that suit. And then when we finally found the right fabric, called up the fabric store. Yeah, can we get this amount of meters? Oh, it's sold out.
Oh.
So
Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Williams, and thank you so much for joining me for another bonus episode. What's going on, costume nerds? I hope you are well and enjoying what's left of summer. Count your days, summer. It is almost over for you. And then finally, us spooky people can leave the house and be our true selves. I'm looking forward to wearing black all the time and not feeling shame for it. I mean, I already do, but if it could just be a little less hot. Watching scary movies, just all the things. I'm just excited for the fall and summer to just go away. But I digress. Today's special episode is about a show that's quite literally taken over the world. The Netflix limited series, Baby Reindeer. I love this show. I have to admit, when I first heard about it, it took me a while to get into it. Is it a true crime? Is it a documentary? Is it just a really good drama? Like, I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone said it was super intense, and maybe I wouldn't like it because, I typically just watch Veep every night, and I don't really like to press my brain on important matters. But once the show was nominated for all these Emmys, including costume design, which we're going to get into, I just knew I had to start the show. And boy, once I did, I just could not put it down. I watched the entire thing in one night, which was actually kind of crazy behavior, but no regrets. I just love this show and I'm so excited to talk about it. But before we do, how about a summary? Baby Reindeer is a story that follows writer and performer Richard Gadd's warped relationship with a female stalker and the impact it has on him as he is ultimately forced to face a deep, dark, buried trauma. And that is Baby Reindeer. Going behind the costumes, we have creator Richard Gadd, which is absolutely wild to me, and costumes designed by Mikel Bailey. You will know Mikel from his notable work such as The Intent, The Mind of Herbert Clunker Dunk, Chairs, and some Motherhood. You also know Mikel by his styling work with clients such as Nicki Minaj, Kelly Rowland, Nick Jonas, Olivia Colman, and more. I am so excited to have Mikel here to discuss his Emmy-nominated work on Baby Reindeer. We get into it all, from meeting with Richard Gadd, Donnie's comedy suit, which is so funny to me, very clown-like in the best way possible, and Martha's mismatched outfits. There's so much happening there, a lot of subtle storytelling, which I'm excited for you all to hear Mikel talk about. Now, I have to admit, we had some audio issues, and when I say we, I mean me, because I forgot to turn my mic on. I know, I am so sorry. I deeply apologize to Mikel, Netflix, all of you, but we had a great conversation. Mikel is just so charming, and I hope you all enjoy this conversation as much as I did. After the break, we'll be joined by Baby Reindeer costume designer Mikel Bailey.
Hi, this is Dan, audio engineer of the podcast, here to let you know that if you wanted to support the show, you can head over to theartofcostume.com/podstore. There you can buy some awesome TeePublic merch with the podcast logo, such as a shirt, coffee mug, stickers, and of course, a baby onesie. Thanks for all your support.
so happy to welcome costume designer Mikkel Bailey. I'm so happy to meet you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Spencer. I'm very excited to be on the show. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I can't imagine what a whirlwind this must be with the show blowing up, and you're quite new to the costume design scene in terms of some of these big projects. I mean, your life must have changed overnight.
Everything you just said times that by 10. And
Yeah.
but we're gonna it's fun. It's fun. We're having a great time with it. But it is a whirlwind. But just so excited that and so happy everyone's loving the show, everyone's loving the costume. So yeah, very grateful.
Well, let's get into it. First, I mean, we have to talk about your recent Emmy nomination, nominated for Outstanding Contemporary Costumes for a Limited or Anthology Series for work on Baby Reindeer. I mean, how does that feel when you saw your name being called? What were your thoughts, along with your supervisor as well?
Yeah, along with my supervisor, the amazing Imogen Holness. I was jumping around in the middle of a barbershop at the time, talking to Margaret, talking to my agent, trying to call my mom. It was all kicking off in that space at that moment. It still hasn't sunk in. Yeah, it still feels very surreal. But yeah, just on Cloud 100. I don't think it ever will really sink in, but it's just great to know that contemporary costume is, valued and people see, I guess it was such a well-made show from every department. So together cohesively, this is the results of when you work hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should be so proud. And I just feel like contemporary costume to me is one of the hardest categories as well, too, because you really have to do a lot of storytelling. I mean, as we'll talk about in Baby Reindeer, sometimes clothes can be very mixed matched and all over the place, but you're telling a story, so it's very subtle. So, I mean, I really appreciate what you've done.
Thank you so much.
Let's get into it. So this is obviously such a wild project, and I think the best place is to start from the beginning. The series was created and written by Richard Gadd, who also plays Donnie in the series, based on Richard's live one-man show and his real experiences. So tell me about the beginning, how you got into this series, what was your reaction to the script, and of course, you had to have met Richard as well. So getting into that story as well, I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so the very, very beginning got given the pilot episode, so episode 1, and it was read this. Loved it straight away, fell in love with it. And then it was make mood boards. So straight away from the producers having the first chat with Matthew, it was to make a mood board based on how I envisioned, especially Donnie and Martha, and a little bit of Terry. They loved the boards. We then had another conversation, and then it kind of escalated from there. So it was about 6 to 7 interviews I had, like with Clerkenwell and the productions, with the producers. And then it was kind of a crazy year, that year going on 2022. It was all kicking off around my birthday. So I just turned 33, was also nominated for Arrow Awards. And on the same night, my agent then told me that we got confirmed for Baby Reindeer. So it was one of those moments. I'm like, oh my God. So a great night. And then, I had a month before the job started. So in that month, it was kind of me starting to do some research, just trying to understand Martha, trying to understand Donnie. And then in that month, I got to meet Richard. So we met up and kind of spent a couple of hours together just talking about himself, talking about me, how we both saw the character, how we both saw the costume. He showed me some of his real costume, or not his costume, his real clothes, just to get an understanding of himself. I guess because it is him playing himself. So there is crossover somewhat as the similarities, and where do we cross over that? And that's how it kind of all started, really. That was the beginning process of Baby Reindeer. Yeah.
I mean, it's such a daunting process. I would assume, working to design costumes for a person that's very much right in front of you, too. That's kind of, I can't rack my brain around that.
It was, I guess it was also a great thing because you could also bounce so much back and forth with Richard.
Yeah.
Somewhat making sure, is this right? But then he gave us such free reign also creatively to explore and create with these costumes. So it wasn't him micromanaging, but definitely there was a vision, there was a understanding as to, this is also a true story.
So the story takes place in and around London in 2015. I'm curious to know what sort of research and preparation you did, to design costumes for a time that, it's not even 10 years ago, but still a little bit of a different vibe in 2015. And you're in London, so you must have had some experience with that. So what was it like going back or recreating that time?
Yeah, so for me, again, I born and raised in London. So going back to 2015, it was somewhat trying to, where was I back myself in that world? And then it was looking at the script and looking at, where is it set in London? And it was set in Camden, so North London. So I went and immersed myself in that area. I went and sat in the Hawley Arms. I went and sat in pubs. I went and sat by the docks and just watched and observed people of the area to try and get as much essence and energy from that time. Well, not from that time, but at least from the, the vicinities and where it actually took place. And then my second kind of reference stance was more separate to people watching, just watching films, TV shows, anything kind of set in those times, or storylines or narratives around those time periods, to again encapsulate the costume or the real period, even though I guess the word period, just going back to that. That was kind of like my research really for it. And then a lot of Martha's kind of references came from, again, me sitting in parks, watching people, watching real people. It was a lot of trying to be very real, as honest as possible with that. And then I guess taking it back to 2015, just being aware that it could never be anything that is so, I guess, stylized in a way that is so current or now. So with that, it had to then be done charity shopped in order to get that character.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the realism in this series is one of the most disarming things about it too, where just you could really see yourself in these situations and in these clothes and in these characters. I mean, it really is part of the terror of it to me, I would say. So let's talk about some characters, beginning with Martha Scott. What an incredible performance by Jessica Gunning, by the way, Emmy nominated. Throughout the series, the timeline during a stalking, it is safe to say that Martha really wears her heart on her sleeve. And there's also realism to Martha, like we talked about. And sometimes her clothes are very mixed matched, or, maybe when she's in a good mood, I feel like she dresses one way. So, can you talk about the philosophy behind her costumes? I feel like we could do an entire podcast just about Martha.
Yeah, so Martha, where do we start with Martha first? Me and Jess met, the lovely Jessica. She is the dream. And, we spoke about body, we spoke about shape, we spoke about everything to do with the character and where we wanted to really push and go. And she was like, let's do this. So just having that freedom already from an actress to allow you to really take it there already helped me. So there was never any holdback or any restrictions in any way, shape or form. And then again, with building Martha from my mood boards, it was then going out and let's find this. So it was going charity shops all around London, all the different postcodes, all the different areas. And in all these different areas, you're going to get different demographics of people. So already that you're going to get different types of clothes. And then again, we whittled it down by then the size and then by the colors and the palettes. So once we got like these pinks and greens and reds and all of these certain colors, it was just taking always back to production, building this whole kind of collection of all of this wardrobe for Jess to try on. And then we just had a massive fit and they tried everything on, and then we just started to build the costumes that way. And again, me looking at the script and being, okay, for this scene, maybe this would be right, and working with, well, what would Donnie be wearing and what is the production here and what is the colors. So it was, again, working with all the different departments to make sure it all made sense. But then taking it the next step further was like, with Martha and the clash of the prints and the tones, all that was purposely done to, again, always show and evoke the emotion and where she is at in her state of mind or herself. And, how far Martha was either, feel sorry for Martha or, wow, this lady's scary. So even like the polka dot dress, there was all this anger and rage. And then when you look at the animal prints, there's this predator. So there's all these subliminals and connotations within the prints that we did with Martha.
I feel like I have to go back and just rewatch it just now that I know the story. I was telling Mikkel behind the scenes, I watched the whole thing last night, so it's crazy. And now that I like know the story, I want to go back and just really look at her costumes because I know that there's a lot of subliminal messages in the costumes that I started to pick up about halfway through. I'm like, oh, something's not right here. Yeah, thank you for that. So let's go back to Donnie. Donnie's a performer, an artist, if you will. So I do believe there's an element of style to Donnie. You know, he's an artist. He has a creative eye, but he's also very real too, especially when we see him in the quote unquote present time when he's working at the pub. I would love to know your process behind Donnie in his everyday life and those costumes.
Yeah, so the process for again with Donny was looking at, well, what was a man, the typical lad, the British guy who tries to be, fit in, muscles, football, drinks a beer, all of those British connotations of what a lad or a man should be. And you never want to stand out, you always want to fit in. And just watching a lot of TV shows set at that time, again, or in the early 90s, to give reference to. And again, just going back and sitting myself in Camden, just looking at the type of guy that works in those spaces. And 9 times out of 10, it's very simple, just a polo shirt. Do you know what I mean? That's it. There's not much to it. But where you then make that special is they're not brand new polos. They're washed out. So a lot of those polos were either sitting in one of my best friend's wardrobe for years that he had, or they were, again, charity shop. So they've had to at least lived and have that story themselves to give that real washed in, might have a little snag, might have a hole here, might be a bit tight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where we try to, well, that's why, push that, the everyday guy. And then you see him in a lot of these hoodies and these jackets and this denim kind of hooded jacket. And again, that's him always covering up, hiding. So it's kind of like his outer shell. But again, making it relatable to this British audience and I guess worldwide, really, that those kind of sweat hoodie jumpers, jackets are so easy to wear. But again, it was his safety space of hiding.
That's his way to kind of escape and just kind of cover up as much as he can because he feels very exposed all the time.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to head over to the Netflix studios not too long ago, and I got to see one of Donnie's comedy suits. And when I saw his suit, I was like, okay, I got to get into this show because I don't know what it's about, but this suit is wild. Tell me about this suit, which I mean, it really does so much storytelling when you see it in action. And it's something everyone listening, I really hope that they go and check out. Tell me about how you landed on this very kind of wacky but perfect suit.
Oh, initially, in actually the pilot episode, it was a suit that was referenced with loads of pockets.
Mm.
So that was the first kind of sketch. So it was loads of pockets. And then me looking at the pockets, how are we going to design these pockets? Well, was it be print on print? Would it be these pockets are see-through? Because, we can see through into himself. So all of this. And then we progressed and evolved into, no, it's going to be like tartan and plaid. Then in that, it was then playing around with the different materials and the fabrics. And me going to loads of fabric shops all around London and us playing around with the swatches. So we'd play dress up with Richard one day in the studio, this one tartan here, and he had one around his waist, and we was just taking non-stop pictures and trying to work out what was the right, how does it work, against his skin, also to tell the story. It's also a comedy suit, but it's also him, he takes himself serious here. There's also an element of, do we go big shoulders? Do we go small? Are we fitted? Is it straight? There's all of those elements with that suit. And then when we finally found the right fabric, called up the fabric store. Yeah, can we get this amount of meters? Oh, it's sold out. So we had to do it all again, but we kind of already whittled it down to our top ones. So then we just, So that was a little behind the scenes, what happened there. But then it worked out for even better. So then with that, it was the tie. So finding the right tie to then work with the suit. And then also the colored shirts underneath. And each of the different colors also represents a different place where he is at within himself.
It's a very iconic piece, I would say at this point. It's a bit clownish, but then it's some of the most heartbreaking scenes take place in this suit as well, too. So it really is that comedy and tragedy aspect. I
Also,
wanted,
so funny, there's also his Converse that also go with the suit as well. If you look smartly at the Converse, there's two colors on them. So to also give this clown-like shoe that goes with the tartan. Yeah.
yeah, it's fantastic. I want to quickly go back to Martha. Did I read that pieces of your family's wardrobe ended up in Martha's costume, or am I making that up?
No, you're right. Yeah, so my grandmother, sadly, she's not well. She's in a home, but so she just has loads of clothes sitting at the house. So, like, yeah, halfway through, I was like, hold up a minute, this would be perfect. I'm like, so I messaged my mom's, my aunts. I'm like, would it be okay to use some of Grand stuff? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah. So there is a couple pieces in there that we actually did end up using.
Fascinating. I'm a big fan of Terry in this series, played by Nava Mao. She is fantastic. Also Emmy nominated at this point. Terry to me is just such a good, pure person, the voice of reason, and your heart just kind of breaks for her because she gets intertwined in this kind of nightmare, and you're just like, bad things don't need to happen to this good person. And I feel like there's a softness and a femininity to her that's really emphasized by her costumes as well. So I was wondering how you approach this character in particular.
Yeah, so the amazing Nava, Terry, she's a dream. There's again a couple sides to Nava's costumes. So you have just injection of life and color. So when you first meet her, she's wearing like the pink and the green, the mini skirts, these crop tops. So already there's this, she's like not a tease in his life, but she's this burst of new life. But then, job and when they're at home, she is this very still put together person. She is this middle ground. And I guess she's like a constant rock, do you know what I mean? So with that stability, that's where we then made sure that, again, how it comes through her costume, as to not push it too far. It kind of has to have this sensibility and practicality to it. But in those moments, then when they're out in the bars and the clubs, there is this, there's this funness to her. And again, that comes out through her energy.
Yeah, there's like an appeal to her where it's almost like Donnie feels like he's so close to almost like a normal life that he wants also too, just like fun and like that's what he wants and he just can't get himself all the way there. It's very heartbreaking actually. So we were talking about you and the several hats you wear throughout your career, being a costume designer, stylist, working in film, TV, commercials, promos, celebrity styling. You've worked with some big names, not to brag, Nicki Minaj, Nick Jonas, Olivia Colman, Kelly Rowland, just to name a few. So do you feel that your experience as a stylist really helped inform your work as costume designer in Baby Reindeer?
Yes, 100%. I feel even from the beginning, that was like one of the first things that the lovely Matthew Mueller, the producer, wanted to highlight to the rest of the team. And he's like, no, amplify that. He's like, push that, that's what you've done, that's your experience, and that's why you are where you are. But definitely trying to add a bit of stylizedness subtly, I guess, like, so for the suit and like with characters like Terry, and also with Martha, just knowing how to play and create a character, but through fashion, but it doesn't always have to be high-end fashion. Do you know what I mean? So, but my experience of working on a TV show many years ago with a stylist called Gok Kwan, where I assisted him, and that was all about real people, real shapes, real women. So it wasn't just about a size 6 model. So being able to dress all body shapes is an advantage, I think. That definitely helped me with that. And I guess the contacts I had from the fashion world, so being able to get the trousers, that the suit that Donnie made is made by Chada de Diego. So they gave us their pattern, they made that for us. So again, by having that connection, it kind of helped as well.
Yeah,
So yeah.
it definitely was a leg up. So Mikkel, the show is hugely popular, and I'm so happy for you and everyone who worked on it. I mean, it has 11 Emmy nominations. While there's at times a bit of humor to the story, it also is extremely impactful story. So for my last question, I want to know,
what the series has meant to you, and what do you hope the audiences take away from watching this series, Baby Reindeer?
Well, firstly, the series means so much to me. Firstly, because I'm honored to be able to work on a show that is, Richard's true story, and he's allowed us to tell his story with him. But why I was also attracted to the story is because there was moments in it that I guess, relate to me. I always want to work on things that I can relate to, that I've experienced or somewhat experienced through another person or close to, or things that I would always like to advocate or, be to share to the world, especially being a gay person myself. So it touches upon so many layers that I feel like I'm always to support that and push that. And I'm just, so that's what the show meant to me. And it really was just a huge job that I'm, proud of myself that I managed to do it. And definitely there's a lot there, but definitely had all the support from the right people. And with the right team, we did it. And just proud that the hard work every day, showing up and putting our 110% into it, it's now somewhat people can see that. So that's what I'm honored and grateful for.
Yeah, and what do you hope audiences take away from watching this series?
I hope it raises and breeds or educates awareness, really. I hope it teaches people. And I think it just opens up the eyes to the world that there's so much more than always the unison way, that it doesn't always have to be either a man to a woman. It can be a woman to a man, or just how, again, that's it really. Just educate people on there are true stories out there and how can we grow from these.
Costume designer Mikkel Bailey, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a joy. I'm so happy for you and your team. And just huge congratulations to all of you. This has been fantastic.
Thanks, Spencer. Thank you.
The Art of Costume podcast is hosted and produced by Elizabeth Joy Glass and Spencer Williams. Our audio engineering and editing is done by Dan White. Follow us on TikTok at The Art of Costume and Instagram at The Art of Costume Pod. If you want to support the show, go to theartofcostume.com/podstore. For more podcast updates, costume reviews, deep dives, and interviews, go to theartofcostume.com. A blog dedicated to highlighting the best in costume design.